So my apologies
Awesome.
if there's ever barking.
Always.
Awesome. So it's 8:05, so I think it's a great time to get started with the event. So, yep, thank you so much for joining everyone for undergraduate research panel hosted by Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics. My name is Judy Park. I will be the moderator of this panel. I am a senior at Purdue University studying aeronautics and astronautics and mathematics. I will talk about Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics a little bit, and then we can actually move on to the panel. So WOA has been founded to provide support and empowerment and networking opportunities for women and marginalized genders, but also more broadly, minorities in aerospace field, beginning with university students trying to reach to the professional level as well. WOA National has started from 2018, and I believe right now we have 21 US national chapters and 2 international chapters, including India and Nepal, and we are in progress of trying to create WOA Mexico as well. So these are some of our local chapters in different universities. If you are interested in learning about any of our initiatives and other events you would like to volunteer or participate in, please look into our social media below. We have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you are interested in joining us directly, please take a look into the emails provided on the screen, woa.national@gmail.com. We are always welcoming more volunteers and speakers and participants in general. Okay, so this is a great time to move on to introducing our panelists. So would you be able to introduce yourself, including your pronouns, your profession, and anything else you would like to talk about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Judy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. I'm Banafshe Sayed Agazadeh. I'm an assistant professor at University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth. I'm a mechanical engineering professor. I did my undergraduate and graduate studies all in mechanical engineering. I am a part of technical committee at WOA as well, and I'm here just to tell you about my experiences being as an undergraduate, graduate researcher, and now as an assistant professor. So thanks for having me. That is it. Yes? Should I say something else?
No, I just had to unmute myself and move to the next slide.
All right, so this is me. Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Benner. I am wrapping up, actually starting my 4th year of the PhD program at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I am in the mechanical engineering department, and I study vibrations of wind turbine blades and other structures. So happy to join you all today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Bridget.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a PhD candidate at Purdue in Aeronautic and Astronautical Engineering. I started undergrad in 2012 at Purdue, finished my MS in 2018, and hoping one more year left on my PhD. I study micropropulsion for small satellites. I just prelimed like a week ago, so it's very new to be a candidate. But I study micropropulsion for small satellites, which I started as an undergraduate researcher in back in 2014. So been doing this a little while.
Thank you, Kate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm a 5th year undergrad at Georgia Tech, so I'm very honored to be amongst all these PhD and professors. I feel like a baby, but I've been involved with kind of a lot of different types of undergraduate research because I didn't really know what I want to do. Right now, I am in a lab for electric propulsion, and it took me a long time and a lot of emailing and following up to get into this particular lab. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of the stuff that I wish I knew. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Emily. So now is a great time to start with some of the questions I have prepared. The first question for all panelists, please feel free to answer whenever you feel comfortable. What made you choose the research project you have worked on? And how could students find projects that are best suited for them?
I am going to answer the second part of this. I think I'm going to give the floor to everyone else to share their experience, but I can let you know about how you can reach out to professors and how you can find out about those possibilities. But please, I don't know who wants to, maybe should I go and answer that? But let me know. Yeah, okay. I will go ahead and do that. So we'll come back to the first part. So I think one of the best ways to find out about research opportunities is just the courses, classes that you take. Just be mindful that, do I really like this professor? Do I really like this topic that I'm taking? Do I feel connected to this topic or not? If the answer is yes, then my suggestion is always go ahead and start this conversation with this professor saying, hey, I'm interested in this topic. By the way, do you have any research projects that I can contribute to? And most often the answer is yes, why not? Send me an email, send me your resume, and the conversation would start from there. So that is something that I always would really like to see, if an undergraduate student is that much proactive to approach me and ask for these opportunities. You can always look online on the website. Almost every faculty member have their research interests listed in their faculty website. Most of us have our own research lab websites. Definitely take a look at those. You really don't need to understand what they're doing, but if just the figures, pictures, or activities look nice to you, that is a good sign. Go ahead and approach that professor. I think the other things that might be also a good way to find about research opportunities is just senior design projects. Normally, if you're an engineering major, during your senior year, you would work on a project. So that project can also have a research component as well. That can lead into publications or conference presentations and everything else, or that can be a starting point for your graduate school as well. So that can also be something I would add if I remember things later, but please go ahead and if someone else wants to chip in.
I'll jump in off that because that's exactly what I had done in order to get my first research opportunity. So my sophomore year, I knew I had to be on campus between my sophomore year and my junior year. I played soccer at Purdue. They wanted us to always be on campus for the summers for training. So I needed something to do. And if I took another class, I would graduate early, which was going to be too much stress on my schedule to pull off. So I wanted to do research. I figured, hey, if I can't do an internship, may as well do research. And I looked at what professors I had. I found that I really was enjoying my fluid mechanics class, and I really liked that professor. She seemed really cool and seemed approachable. And it said that she did some propulsion research. I said, okay, I'm interested in propulsion. Let's go talk to her. And I talked to her after class. Did exactly like you had said. Asked, do you have research available for undergrads in the summer? And if you don't, which professors can you point me to that might? And she immediately set me up, said, send me your resume. And then we had a meeting, and suddenly I had my first micropropulsion research project to work on, which I had no idea what that really entailed when I started, but I was very lucky that I actually really liked what I work on and that I'm pretty good at what I work on. So as far as the picking a research project, I don't really have very good advice on that. I lucked into having a good research project, but having the outgoing nature to go and to just talk to a professor. I know it's really intimidating, but it worked out for me really well. So I can say that there's the ability to have that happen. So that's my number one piece of advice is look at the professors, any of them, especially that you have that maybe you're doing well in their class, go and talk to them about what they have available. Most of them love to talk about what they do.
Yeah, so I'll jump in too. So for me, I knew when I went back to school that I really wanted to do something centered around renewable energy technologies. So I applied to a wind energy REU, which if you don't know, that stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. I was a community college student at the time. And so I went to UMass Amherst to do the REU. But there's a bunch of different universities that you can go to do this. They put you up in a dorm for the summer. They give you a stipend to work with. It was just a really awesome experience. And then from there, since I wanted to do renewable energy, I was assigned a wind energy project looking at vibrations of a scaled down airfoil. So I instantly, took to it and really enjoyed it. I do experimental work, which I really enjoy doing as well. You can definitely do computational or experimental, and experimental fit me really well. And I decided to stay in the lab, and I'm a PhD candidate there now. So I guess I kind of lucked out a bit like Kate as well. So yeah, that was my experience. I think along the lines of what Benafshe was saying, it's also important to find an advisor that suits your personality well. Much like taking a class, it can really be make it or break it depending on the professor. I think that could be the same for your research as well. Kind of knowing what support you need, what kind of management style works well for you. So yeah, I think that would be my advice. It's not a bad thing to try different labs, try different research projects. If it doesn't suit you well at first, you can reflect back on it and, think about why it didn't work out and maybe, what you could look for differently the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like everything that everyone has said so far. One of the things that I guess made me choose my research project is I was lucky enough to be in charge of like a lab tours thing for my local WOA chapter in my third year. And this was like when I had kind of cycled through a lot of projects that I wasn't super interested in, but I kind of did research for the sake of doing research. And I saw this electric propulsion lab and I was like, oh my God, this is really cool, like the plasmas and everything. And I was like, this is so cool. That's basically the mentality I went into it. It's just this is really cool and I really want to learn more about it. So I emailed the professor, he said no. And then the next semester I emailed the professor again and he also said no. And then the third semester, he finally said yes. So sometimes it takes a few tries, but I definitely agree that if you have a class that you think you're interested in, then reaching out to your professor is definitely something that they will look out for. In terms of finding a project that's best suited for you, for me, it was of the different projects that I was kind of involved in, what part of it did I like? I kind of had to think a little bit. And for me, it was the hands-on aspect of projects. And then coupled with the fact that I thought propulsion was super cool. And it was one sentence that my professor said once that was just in-space propulsion is one of the limiting factors of space travel. And I was like, great, I want to jump on that. But so it could just be something as simple as that. So definitely trying things out, seeing what kind of things you like, what kind of things you don't like. And if you like the people there, as others have said, and if you like your professor as well, those are also things that are very important that will allow you to pick a project that you really like.
I just want to add something I just remembered. So let's say, well, you have taken all these classes, you really don't feel connected with anyone, but you just want to do something, add this research assistantship to your resume because you just want to experience that. Something that I have seen in my advisees now is sometimes they have absolutely no idea how to get into like what is expected from an undergraduate researcher. Should you come with an idea to the lab and propose that to that professor, or no? I mean, they have no idea. So just want to make sure that everyone is following this. Especially for an undergraduate student, you absolutely don't need to have an idea. And actually, even if you have an idea, most probably that professor is not going to run that idea, because we already have our own ideas. We are looking for students to take little pieces of this and move forward with that. Of course, it is very nice if you have some ideas. As you move forward, there might be opportunities that you can showcase your skill sets or try to develop that idea as a side project. But most often, we do have our own projects. So we are just looking for somebody with this particular skill set or with no skill sets, just a student with this time to do that research. So I see my advice that like when I say do research, have you looked into research opportunities, especially among freshmen, sophomore students? They think that they have to pass all these classes to start doing the research, which is absolutely not correct. I would definitely suggest start as soon as you can, even when you're a freshman. When you're sophomore, that's the best time to start doing research. So don't wait till you're senior, because by that time you're super busy with so many other things. Yeah, that is something. The other thing was about your academic advisor. I think at most schools, if not all, every undergraduate student is assigned to an academic advisor that you go to when you're trying to take your classes or registering things or just get some academic advice. So use those opportunities. Ask your academic advisor, hey, I want to get involved with some research, but I really don't know where to start. Like I myself, I advise like 20, 30 students every semester. So if somebody approaches me, I can direct them based on the looking at their GPAs and the classes that they have taken and the grades that I have access to see. I can recommend things, or internally, I might know about upcoming undergraduate research opportunities among my colleagues that I can refer that student to. So just don't be shy. I think use your professors, your academic advisors who are your professors to find about how you can get involved with research opportunities. Thank you.
Any panelists would like to add anything about this question? Awesome. Thank you so much for all these very valuable advice. I really wish I had people telling me these things when I was a freshman, when I had more time, but still, hey, everyone, it's not too late right now. This is the earliest time you can start doing research. You need to start doing research if you want to. Don't think it's too late. This is the right time. Our next question would be, what kind of hardships did you face in your research project, either as students or instructors, and how did you overcome it?
I'll go ahead and lead this one. You're bound to probably encounter a lot of hardships, which is fine. So one of my biggest ones was public speaking. The first time I went to present my research, it was at a big international conference, and it was really scary. You know, I'm one of those people where my voice was shaking, you know, visibly sweating. It was not great. But it really is true that, you know, the more that you practice it, the better that you get over time. So, you know, now I find myself kind of throwing myself into those situations, signing up to, you know, do different public speaking events, different workshops, so I can practice and I can get better at it. So, you know, if you just keep throwing yourself into it, you're bound to get better over time. Another thing that I struggled with was balancing school, research, extracurricular activities, and having to work a job during my time as an undergraduate. And I really learned through that to communicate with my advisor about what I had going on. And then from there, he was able to help me prioritize my research tasks and also set realistic goals. So definitely keep that line of communication open with your advisor. That can really help. But most importantly, I would say just, perseverance through any of these hardships is just crucial. We all have good days. We all have bad days. We'll all encounter setbacks. And I think just continuing to show up and put in the effort is going to take you really far.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback on that a little bit. So I really, really agree with like the whole balancing things is huge. Like that's, you don't immediately realize that undergraduate research is going to be something that takes more hours out of your schedule. So like definitely be like Bridget and not like me, and like keep that line of communication open, because I definitely like tried to handle that myself, and like I kind of spread myself too thin. Having someone like walk you through it is definitely a lot more helpful, and will probably like get you there a lot like easier than trying to just budget everything yourself. One of the other things that I experienced during a research project is unfortunately like the people there had a kind of culture that wasn't exactly inclusive. It was a little bit of a boys club demeanor. A lot of inappropriate jokes were thrown around, and like a toxic work culture. And unfortunately, the instructor didn't really care. And like that was one of the things that was really difficult, mainly because like me and some of the other like women in the club tried to spearhead like a kind of effort to change this, but like obviously you don't have to do that. And that was like an effort that didn't end up like reaping too much. But I guess like my advice for that would just be, don't stay in a project if it's not healthy for you. Like if the culture or the environment is just not becoming healthy, like don't feel like you have to stay in it. There are other labs that have things that you're interested in that you can go to, who will also give you a good environment. So definitely like that's something that is important to note, is like you tend to perform better and feel better when you're in a good environment. And another thing I kind of struggled with is that like some projects like would kind of pawn kind of busy work or like not really important work to the undergrads, because a lot of grad students were on the project, and they were like the main ones who were getting paid and everything. And I guess my advice for that would just be like, ask people if you're not feeling fulfilled by your work. So you can always ask students like, hey, what are you working on? Like, can I help? Or like, oh, I want to learn about this thing that you're doing. Can you teach me? So always like keep that line of communication open. Also, the last thing I'll note is that it took me a long time to get into the lab that I have because of my GPA. Unfortunately, the professor took one look at my GPA and was just like, nope, you're not getting in my lab. So be sure to focus on your study as well.
So to go off of that, so back to what Bridget had said about the public speaking thing, my first paper was also to a international conference. I was the first, so we were in like smaller sessions. I was the first person to talk in my session. It was the very first day that I was at the conference. I'd flown in the night before, so I'd missed the first 2 days. And oh boy, I was not prepared. I was so like, it was also 6:30 in the morning. Who starts conference at 6:30 in the morning? And so I was nervous. I'd only slept 2 hours the night before because I was practicing, because I was so worried about it. And I stood behind the podium the entire time because I had no idea what anybody else had been doing. And then every other person after me were like, first off, all of them were these old white dudes this whole time. And so they all like were standing there with all this command, like they owned the entire room. And I was just like, wow, I must have seemed like such a noob being the first person to talk. But then after that, I was like, okay, so that's what you do at an international research conference. That's how you give your presentations. So I learned very quickly. And in the grand scheme of things, nobody remembers that one person who had a terrible presentation. I gave the presentation great. I just was stuck behind the podium the whole time, which apparently the podium is not there for you to stand behind. I didn't know that. But then also I think so we all suffer from a certain degree from imposter syndrome. That is not something that anybody is alone in. My advisor also has that same feeling, and we have talked about it, and which is wonderful that I have an advisor that, will have those types of conversations with me. She also doesn't like doing a ton of public speaking. She's from Russia. Her English is perfect. She has an accent, but it is not that hard to like understand her after listening to her for about 2 minutes. You just get used to the accent, but she is so like scared of people not understanding what she's saying, and she thinks that sometimes like her accent's not as good as it really is, and she gets really scared about doing all that public speaking, and she has to like pump herself up to give lectures to people like for classes, and knowing that really like brought my imposter syndrome down. And I was like, okay, if my really awesome advisor also struggles with some of these things, I can feel a little bit better that me feeling this way is not that bad. It still affects me, but I have mechanisms I've learned to help with that. And then also with that toxic work environment, I did also have my mentor that I started with when I was an undergrad, developed attachments that weren't appropriate for the mentor relationship. And I didn't know what to do about that. And that was a really hard thing to work through. And I ended up, it basically just came to a halt where it's like, okay, we can't work together anymore. What you are doing is not okay. And which was really nice that he didn't actually work on my research project. He was just like the person who had been assigned to me as an undergrad. And once I got into grad school, it just became really toxic. And that was very awkward. And like, it still is something when we are in the lab together, I struggle with it, but that it's also something that I wasn't very healthy, and I didn't try to talk to anybody about it because like, I didn't want to ruin everything. I'd already lost this mentor who like, he's super smart. He knew all of the things that I needed to learn in order to help myself grow. But yeah, I found a different mentor who's wonderful. My advisor, I've never had to work on a project with this other student again. I think he did learn that what he was doing was not okay. And it has gotten better, but that is something that's I was lucky that it wasn't something that I felt like I really needed to bring somebody else into the situation. It never escalated to that point. It was just making me very uncomfortable. So that is something that, some of us have had to deal with. That workplace harassment level stuff is not just in the outside world. It does happen in academia. So know your resources, like look them up before it's a problem. Know what the protocols are so that you aren't left in a situation where you feel very stuck. I was very lucky I didn't have to leave my project or anything, but definitely look it up before it's a problem, and try and figure those things out ahead of time. And if you otherwise, know that you're also not alone. Most schools have mechanisms for that, and there's at least going to be somebody you can talk to. So.
So great. I can add a couple of things. It is actually very nice to see everyone talking about their public speaking fear, which I think that is something in common most probably at school for everyone. As Bridget was saying, her experience in that conference, I happened to be there. And let me tell you the truth, she did fantastic. As I was in the audience, that is just your own feeling that you're shaking inside and you're not sure about things. I don't know what I'm talking about, but everyone else is not really seeing that. So it was perfect. I can say it was 100 out of 100. And I told her at that time, but I think she didn't take it that seriously. And I'm sure it is the experience for every one of us. I have told the same story of my first conference presentation to my own PhD advisor, and he said, well, you did very good. I didn't notice that, which is a big relief. Oh, okay. But I was like sweating and shaking inside, and I was so terrified of that experience. So I think this is something that everyone should just deal with it. It's going to happen, and you're going to think you did not do very good, but you did actually. The other thing about conferences, that because we just brought this up, going to conferences for the last like 10 years or so, let me give you something. If you're an undergraduate student standing up talking about your research, everyone already is so impressed by you and the trust and the work that you've put into this thing, that now you're presenting this at a very good national conference. The audience have different expectations set for different people. Like if I, as a faculty member, go and give a very shaky talk, then expectation for me is much higher. But if an undergraduate student, and believe me, everyone would know, oh, this is an undergraduate student, oh, this is a graduate student. This person might be first year, early in their graduate studies, they might be late in their graduate studies. You can say, after going to conferences for a couple of years, the person at the podium, you can say, you can tell like who they are. So if you're an undergraduate student and you've been that accomplished person that you're giving that talk, bravo, don't feel bad. So whatever presentation you give, that is excellent. Then if you're a graduate student, same thing. So I think I'm just gonna say this, you're not gonna believe it, but just go ahead, give that talk. You're doing fantastic. Don't be afraid. Everyone tune their expectations from the person who's giving the talk. So just don't worry. I think this is the common between everyone. I have fielded myself, and now I tell the same thing to my own students. You've done all these practices and everything else, so you're gonna be good. Last thing I want to mention about hardship, I think everyone talked about this. I do see that time management skill set to be very important when you're signing yourself to research projects. So make sure that you're very honest, candid about how much time and effort you can put into this project. Because I, as a professor, if I'm giving you this project, I'm expecting this to be done by this deadline, because I am also on a deadline. So make sure that you're very clear how much time you can spend on this. Maybe this whole project is too big for you with this time commitment of yours, that I need to assign 2 students, which is not bad. It is a good thing, but I need to know beforehand. That is good for your professors, because we can adjust our expectations, and then we don't burden you with too much of pressure. So the honest conversation, definitely go with that. If even during the project, if you feel overwhelmed, have a conversation. I think most often it's a good thing, unless, I don't know, you have a very particular advisor that doesn't like that. But most often, be honest about what skills you have, how much time you can spend on these projects, and if things get overwhelmed, which can, and just be open to discuss that with your advisor.
Thank you, all the panelists, for sharing all your amazing advice for all the future or current undergraduate researchers. Adding on to what Banafsheh said earlier, honestly, I really like surrounding myself with all the professionals or grad students in WOA or anywhere else, so that I feel like a baby bird chirping, even if I mess up something. Like they won't take it too seriously. Like that's how I cope with my insecurities and imposter syndrome sometimes. And I don't know, like even Kate, who was my graduate TA in my research project, I think she was very generous and kind about things I did a good job or messed up. She's been constantly super nice, and I think that was one of the best part about the project, having someone who can give me such constant reminder that, hey, you're doing great. You might have maybe messed up this very tiny thing, but it's actually maybe like 3% of the whole thing, and you did a very good job. I think that was like the best part about having joining a project with Kate.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that the likelihood that you're going to be given something that's so mission critical that if you mess it up, everything's going to like go downhill, it's very minimal. Very few people are going to give you that much power over the project when there's a grant involved. So understand that, like you said, deadlines, they exist, they need to be met. But you're probably not doing work on something that's so important that it's going to fully derail an entire grant. So take your work seriously, but you do have the safety net of nobody gives undergrads that much power. So
good to know there's a safety net for most undergraduate research students. We can maybe move on to our maybe one of the last questions. How could students and instructors make a research lab a more diverse and inclusive environment? Also, because we minority students are so tired of hearing about you need to do something to change the lab, is there any advice we would like to give allies to make our lab environments a better place for minorities?
Yeah, so I can start off real quick. I think that one thing that I'm really passionate about is mentorship. So knowing that there's someone within a group or project that is like actively invested in your success and that can support you, I think that can go a long way, especially for people who like don't look like everyone in the lab. I think that it can make kind of an isolating experience feel a lot more inclusive. Sometimes even just like a simple welcome to the project, let me know if there's anything I can help you with, can go like a really long way. It's just a simple message to anyone who's new on the team. Sometimes, and that like applies for allies too, just like letting people know that they can come to you for help if they need it. And sometimes having outings or social events to kind of get to know people besides kind of a coworker basis is also helpful. I might think of other ones, but those are the first ones that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Emily, as you mentioned. From a professor point of view, like when I'm hiring somebody, let it be undergraduate student, graduate student, I try to be mindful of all type of different diversities and inclusions that can exist, like different students. I think something that really helps for me, something that has helped to develop my lab is to start diverse from the beginning. So that sets an example to the incoming students that they can feel at ease to approach me later or approach any of the students in the lab to ask for any other research opportunities. So if you keep your lab very not diverse, so that's not a good example, and it kind of is a red flag for everyone else not to approach. So I think if this is something that you really would like to be in a diverse environment, looking at that lab's website, the body of the people who are there, like looking at their profiles would give you a very good idea about how this lab is managed. What is the mindset in that lab, how things are working in that lab. I very clearly remember when I was in graduate school, we were at this conference. There was this reception night that people were just mingling around, and I was in the team of my advisor's lab, and Bridget was there too. Like the lab is very diverse. Like we have different many, I think, female students, at least. We have international students from everywhere. So we were just talking, and like we looked different. Like it was a very mixed group of people that were having really fun, I think, at the time. And somebody approached and said, wow, this looks like a very diverse team. And then they got interested to just hear about who's coming from where and who's doing what. And it was very interesting for them to see that we are all a part of the same lab. And like, I think that has a very strong message, that how that lab, how that team is being managed. So I would try really to be mindful of this. I mean, as a PI, just doing some volunteer work like what I'm doing here. This is a door for me to open for a diverse team of people, or educate at least diverse team of people to about things that matter to me or things that I know about. I think if you're trying to join a lab, take a good look at the people page of that lab. Let's see who is there, how many of these people in the past look different, they look diverse, and that should tell you a good story.
When I started for grad school, when I started in my research group, I was one of 3 students that were US citizens out of a 18-person research group. So almost everybody in my research group was international. And again, my advisor was not born in the US. She definitely likes to make sure that there's we have a lot of international students in our department. She tries to make sure to put international students on the teams where there's not restrictions on that no export control stuff. So I've tried to make sure that within the research project that Judy mentioned, that we have as much diversity as possible. Granted, for the first half of running that course, it was application based. And I don't know if it was because it said it was a NASA project or just the fact that it was propulsion, don't know. But we always would get like only US citizen males to apply. Which doesn't lend to a very diverse group of people. And once we switched over to a different program within the university, we started getting significant upticks in diversity, which has been, I think, great. And Judy can talk about, I know there's been issues before on the team that we've had to address, and it's opened my eyes to how to run diverse groups of people and trying to consider things that otherwise I wouldn't have known were problems. And that's been really good to learn. I wish that I had known about it beforehand. I didn't have to learn it as things were coming up, but I've definitely tried to make sure that there's a diverse group of people with diverse backgrounds, but also diverse amounts of knowledge that they know, so that we're not just taking in people who already know how to do things. We're also teaching new people, which gives you, again, more diversity in the base makeup of your group. And I think for the most part, I've been trying to make sure that happens. Again, it can be, especially when you're having people apply for things, it can be really hard to ensure diversity when you're having to pick from a fairly heterogeneous group of people who are all applying for the same thing. You're like, well, I really wanted to have at least one girl in that entire group, but none of them applied. And this is something that I've been trying to think of. Okay, so it's a female professor and a female graduate student that's running it. We had no girls apply. What else did I need to do? And so talking with some people to try and figure out how to change how we approach getting people to apply for the class. That was also eye-opening, because there's things that you don't consider going on in the background of trying to get people to sign up for things. So yes, definitely check and see what the diversity is like in the groups that you're working in or that you're applying for, but also know that sometimes some of those things, not especially in undergraduate projects, it's not always in the hands of the people running the course, or if it's a course or the project, it could just be the other people who are interested in doing that level of work. because I can say that was very difficult when we had all men on this undergraduate team. I felt really bad about that.
I do want to add like a little bit to what Kate just mentioned. Personally, at Purdue University Aeronautics and Astronautics department, we don't have a lot of women, just to begin with. And it could be a vicious cycle. It's probably the same situation in a lot of different schools as well. But also, unfortunately, I know that there's a lot of loss in women students and minority students from the aerospace department because they don't have positive experience in the department. I personally know many who left Purdue Aero because of many different reasons. And this is because labs or schools are generally not prepared to protect the minority students or women students or provide them what they need so that they don't leave. Before recruiting them, we need to have a strong base of minority students and women students who have positive experience and have the opportunity to grow and feel safe in their environment so that they can bring in more women and minority students who hear about their experience and have the motivation to join and actually stay in the department. So even though I'm a moderator and I probably shouldn't be talking about so much about myself, but in my past two research experiences at Purdue, something I wish I could tell other people regarding what I have experienced is that allies, please actively reach out to and listen to minority and women students, because sometimes the environment itself, the society itself silence them, and it is difficult for them to have louder voice than the other students who have the systemic privilege. So it is important to actively reach out to them and listen to them instead of just, there isn't any conflicts that I can see, so it's fine. Instead of that, please reach out to them and make sure they are doing okay. Make sure they're having a safe environment to grow and learn so that they can stick to the program and bring in more. Any other panelists would like to add to the hardship part of the research project?
There should be some good news too about this question, which is if you're among the group of minorities, there are always particular research fundings and opportunities that you can apply to and you can get funded to. So there are some systems who are trying to protect these minorities. It's not always bad, but you need to find those. But if you're there, then the good news is you can be one of those. So always keep an open eye on these opportunities if they show up. From professors' point of views as well, like when we, let's say, write proposals, we always, it's a cliche, we write, oh yes, we are trying to promote diversity and inclusion, and we do this through these 1 or 2 or 3 steps. So it is an obligation for us also. We promise that to the funding agency that we're going to do this. So if I'm approached by, let's say, 10 candidates, and like I have this and let's say all candidates are almost in the same level, but if I have this diverse group of students, then chances are I would be more inclined to that, because that's what I promised. That is how I got my funding. I'm not saying everyone does that, but chances are that they will be more inclined to doing that. Now, bringing the diverse students to the lab is something, but keeping them happy is another thing. So, but it's still that's the first step. So make sure that you look into those opportunities if you're among those minority groups.
On that, one more thing. Again, my advisor is very conscious of those things. And also, I know, especially in aerospace, international students getting internships can be very difficult. And so again, part of the reason why she wants more international students on her, like especially undergrads, on her research projects is she knows that it might be the only thing they can get on their resume to boost them up. So she knows that. And I'm guessing that there are probably other professors out there who also know that, who can help in that way. So know that just because you're an international student does not exclude you from research. That's probably one of the better avenues that you can take if you are struggling with internships.
Thank you so much for all the advice regarding hardships students and instructors can experience in research. I think this is a great time to move on to like giving short advice to both research students and instructors. Just regarding the undergraduate research experience, what kind of advice would you like to give to students and instructors?
I want to start with, for students, don't be afraid to admit when you don't know something when you're especially when you're starting. If your professor starts going off on like this whole thing about some mechanism within the field that you're working in, so fluid mechanics specifically, like something about rarefied gas dynamics, and you are like, I have never learned this before, don't just nod your head and say, yeah, got it, yes. If you're confused, ask questions. When you're on the spot, especially in presentations, don't try and if you're actually stumped, don't try to come up with something out of thin air. Well, it's not going to work. Everybody's going to see through it, and somebody's going to know you're not saying something that's correct. There's going to be somebody who picks you apart, and that will be worse than saying, I don't know. Should you maybe know some of those things? Yes, but it's better to say you don't than to pretend that you do. I've seen so many undergrads who have tried to do this, and it's painful. It's very painful to watch them get picked apart by a professor or by like somebody who's a professional and is like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. So be sure to admit when you don't know something, and then ask how to learn about it and ask for resources. Put in the time to then go and learn the things, but admit when you don't know the answer. That's my top piece of advice I try to give my undergraduate students.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely want to reiterate that. Ask as many questions as possible. You're there to learn, and you don't know what you don't know until you ask. And that's something that I've had to learn as well. One thing that I also want to say is really pursue what you want to do. I've had a lot of moments where I've seen a project and I'm like, oh, I don't have this skill set or that skill set. Or oh, like, oh, this is probably for someone who's more qualified, or just stuff like that. And like, in addition with the fact that I've had to reach out, or I've gotten rejected by my professor like twice, it was just kind of like, is this not the research project for me? But really, sometimes you just have to keep like going at it. If you really want it, like really go at it. And you know, eventually it'll get somewhere. And also want to say, do take care of yourself, especially when it comes to like projects that might be more demanding, or just taking on a project is already pretty demanding in itself. Don't spread yourself too thin to where your grades drop or you're miserable. Research can be a lot of work, and you want to have enough energy to make the best out of it, like ask the right questions, do good work, and interact with everyone. And it takes energy to do that. So like, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can make the best out of your research opportunity.
This is really solid advice. Definitely agree. Ask questions, ask all the, you know, quote unquote dumb questions that you have. You're an undergraduate, no one expects you to have all the answers. So ask away. And also, yes, definitely take care of yourself, your, you know, mental health. You know, burnout is very real, and you should be on top of it as much as you can and not spreading yourself too thin. And something that Benafshe said earlier too, that really stuck with me is definitely, as far as research goes, start early, start really early as you can. And, that way you can really see what works for you, what you like, what you don't like, reflect back on that before you start graduate school, or you decide, I really hate research and I don't want to do this and I want to just go into industry, and that's fine too. So yeah, all those things.
Great. I can add a little bit to this. I agree with everything that everyone said. Definitely very great advices. Something I would also add is, listen, when you start doing your research with somebody, you start to develop this relation with that advisor. So if you get their trust, or if you get connected to this, which hopefully you will, it's not just you're moving forward with that research project, it's a line that you're adding to your resume. No, it's not just that. It is you are creating this relationship with this person who has been in this field for much more years than you, and most probably they can give you some advice, no matter if this is advice for which classes to take, or which internship to select, or which career or co-op or part-time, full-time job to go with. Is this graduate school good for you? Writing recommendation letters, introducing you to their network. So you would gain so many other things as you are getting involved in this research relationship with your advisor. So that person can be later your mentor. And definitely my last advice is find a good mentor for yourself, somebody you feel comfortable with. Talk to them about different things. Well, unfortunately, not every research experience would turn out that advisor is the best person that you can trust and that would be a best mentor. But chances are that that will happen. You would feel very comfortable with that research advisors of you, that you would just ask for different advices on many different things. So to me, being a professor, that's my ideal world, that every single person in my lab, no matter if they're undergraduate, graduate, postdocs, they feel that comfortable with me that they would ask for different voices on different things. But at the same time, we keep these professional relationships. At the same time, I have my research expectations and everything else. So it is as if I wear different hats, but I'm the same person. So I think that is the makeup, like that's the goal for me to be that advisor, to be that research advisor, that I'm not just advisor, I'm not their friend, obviously not their friend. We laugh and do other things, but I'm not your friend. I'm your research advisor, but I would really love to be your mentor as well. I would really love to have your trust in me, so I can give you advice. And believe me, every professor, like if you leave us, we can just talk and talk and talk and talk and give advice as much as we can. So I just want to mention that because mental health was brought up. Again, unfortunately, not every advisor is mindful of their students' mental health. I can't guarantee that, but if you find somebody who is mindful of that, who checks in with you every now and then after every semester and just have this casual conversation with you, value that advisor. That is the person who cares. So even if that's not the 100% the best research experience that you would like to continue, keep your relationship going on with that person. That person can become your mentor, and you can hopefully benefit from that relationship.
One more small piece that you made me think of something. This goes for both within teaching undergraduates, but also for being an undergraduate. Demystify the academic structure for yourselves or for your students. One biggest problem I have seen with some students, with especially like, should I do grad school? I don't even know what grad school entails. Nobody, especially at Purdue, nobody tells you any of this when you arrive. It's assumed that somehow you magically know what the difference between a full professor and an assistant professor is, how assistants get tenure. You just are told that it's a thing. no one explains it to you. Nobody explains what's the process of getting a PhD, those sort of things. Ask those sort of questions. Find people that you trust to ask those questions, because I know it can feel like, oh, you don't know how the university structure works? Why don't you know that? Nobody expects anybody to have figured that out. They just think it magically happens at some point. So demystify that for yourself or for your students. And each university is different, so it doesn't apply to everybody, but like figure that out early, because some of those things you might be like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z thing. Yeah, grad school might, just because I like research, might not actually work out well for me if I have to do all of those steps, if it's going to take that long, or if it's very nebulous and you don't know how long it's going to take. That might not work for everybody. And some of those things you commit to this program before you actually know that. That's an important thing to look into if you're an undergraduate and you're doing research because you're considering grad school.
Thank you, all the panelists, for all your wonderful advice and experience you have shared tonight for all our attendees. And thank you, attendees, for coming here tonight and having this place with us. It has been an awesome panel. Personally, I loved hearing all your experiences and advice because literally, like I said, I'm a baby bird navigating an undergrad degree as well. So this has been so educational and I don't know, like wholesome to me. Thank you so much for coming here tonight again.
So thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
It's been
you.
fun.
Judy.
Thank you.
You. Thanks, Indu. Have a good night.
Have a good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.